Today's conversation with Beth McKenzie reaffirmed to me that well-rounded doesn't mean average. Beth is the owner and founder of WYN Republic alongside her husband, Luke. She's a mom of two and a super competitive athlete in her 40s. Ever since meeting Beth a few years ago, I think of her as the epitome of a sustainable athlete whose pursuit of sport, work, and family is one to emulate. Listen in to learn more about how Beth uses running to explore her limits, both physically and mentally. All right, welcome Beth McKenzie to the Level Podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brad.
It is a joy for me that you are here. We've known each other for a couple of years now, and so I'm just super excited to dive into some of your background. You got your hands in a lot of different things, and so I'm excited to talk through that. And then also more specifically, just your transition into running more full time and what that's looked like. We start every single one of our podcasts off with a question. And that question is, what is the why behind why you run?
Yeah, okay. That's a big one, but it's probably the best question ever because it's one that sort of gets at the heart at, why people do this and what our purpose is in pushing our bodies every day. I like it. I didn't find endurance sports until my late 20s at all. And I always had a lot of purpose in life as far as, what I wanted to do education wise, what I wanted my family to be like, things like that. But outside of that, I didn't have any, personal pursuits. And when I found triathlon, that became it. But running was really the only part of triathlon that came more naturally to me. I was, in triathlon, a good runner and very sub-average swimmer and cyclist for the pro field. Eventually, I pulled up to average maybe in some of those, but the running was the thing that kept me going. And back then, when I turned pro in 2012, 2013, you could get by on like 2 sub-average ones and then like a real hot shot run, but you can't do that anymore. Anyway, but as far as why I'm running, I think just now into my mid 40s, it's the kind of thing that I can do the most efficiently and the best way to get some training, but also for me, a way to still be able to challenge myself mentally and physically each day. I don't have to be on my bike 6 hours on a weekend. I can go out for an hour run and work on finding my limits. And I love finding my limits. I love finding the edges of where I can go in things and pushing that. And running gives me that, and it gives me that in a more time efficient way than anything else. So, I'm conscious that I'm not getting any younger. So I feel like I do have a few years left to explore those physical limits, but I think exploring those mental limits will always be there too with running. And that's why it's great for longevity as well, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, from your transition from triathlon to more focused on running, do you feel like running is going to be a lifelong sport for you now? Or is it just like, hey, since you're still very competitive, I'll just do this while I'm competitive and then may phase out of it?
As soon as I found running in my late 20s, I knew it was something I wanted to do for life. For me, even in phases of my life where I'm not feeling competitive or not wanting to go on a start line, I'm still going to be getting out every day to run on the trails, to just decompress, to get away from everything else and just be on my own as well. So I do think that running will be a lifelong thing for me as long as my body allows it, for sure.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there. Like, I feel like running is one of those things that you mentioned, like clearing your head and just decompressing. Obviously, you have a lot going on, and we jumped ahead a little bit, but just to kind of set the stage, like, who is Beth McKenzie? I know a lot of our listeners are going to know who you are, but let's start there.
Oh, that's a big question, Brad, for somebody who's 45, no, I'm not 45 yet. Now I'm aging myself. I have 44 years behind me now, which is great. But I am a mom of 2 young daughters. So they're nearly 10 and 6 years old. Wife to Luke McKenzie, who's also a former professional triathlete like me. And I've also been one of those chameleons in life where I've had many jobs and many careers, but my most recent and definitely most important is as a co-founder of WYN Republic, which is our endurance apparel brand, mostly in the triathlon and cycling space, but also in the running space as well.
That's great. So talking about WYN Republic real quick, can you walk us through like the history of that, just briefly, like when you started it, and just kind of what that timeline process has gone from a startup standpoint?
So both Luke and I were still racing through the 2010s, and in 2017 we started WYN Republic as a triathlon apparel brand that was going to be based mostly in like men's aero tri-suits, because that's what Luke became known for. When he was racing professionally, he was very into the aerodynamics of the suits pretty much before anyone else was. There were a few other things out there, but he was one of the people really at the forefront of it and doing some aerodynamic testing and things like that. And that was something that we really wanted to do before he retired. So we decided to start the company while, we had an infant like you do right now, as well as a toddler, and we were both racing professionally. But we were like, you know what, this is the time we need to do it, because if we wait until a few years after, we're no longer relevant in this space, we can't use ourselves in marketing, that kind of thing. We did try to think ahead. So it was a big, intense time, but yeah, we launched WYN Republic in 2017, and then it grew from there. In 2020, we were both finally ready to retire from professional triathlon racing. So we were going to have a big hoorah over in Roth at Challenge Roth, which is a big long distance triathlon over there. And it would have been a great way to go out, but COVID happened. So that didn't go as planned. Our retirement sort of more fizzled out. I did do one last Ironman, but Luke never did another one. And we just really went full force into our kids and the company, and then transitioning more into being, I like to consider myself more than a hobby jogger, but hobby runners.
Yeah, let's just jump right into it then. I would absolutely say you're more than a hobby jogger.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly aspire to be a hobby jogger. I think that's a great thing, because it's what you and I discussed. It's that longevity. It's having that in your life on a daily basis to give you joy. So no, but I know competitively, I still am more than a hobby jogger on paper. But that was my idea, was transitioning into something that where sports didn't run my life anymore, where it was something that gave me energy, it added into my life, and it wasn't taking away. So I wasn't going to be training 30 hours a week anymore, probably not doing all the little 1%ers I used to do as a professional triathlete, but still putting in a lot of good time and effort into something I love. And yeah, it's been amazing.
That's really cool. So, moving out of the triathlon space, the Ironman space, into you kind of jumped into the road scene first, right? With marathons and a few races like that before getting into trails.
Yeah. So in 2021, actually, so 2020 we retired, and then 2021, you think, okay, I'm not going to do anything else. And then, January 1st rolls around. I was like, okay, what's my next goal? And I'd always wanted to run a standalone marathon. And I thought, while I still got some fitness and some health, I would love to do that. So I signed up for the Gold Coast Marathon, which is it's one of the biggest marathons in Australia, but worldwide, it's not huge. Signed up for the Gold Coast Marathon, which is in July, and started training seriously for that. I did feel like I got super fit, but then 3 weeks before the race, I got a stress fracture, actually. So I wasn't able to do the race, and spent the rest of 2021 really rehabbing. And that's actually when I met you, Brad. We met at St. George in 2021. Yeah. And I learned all about the lever, and I knew I had to have one right then. I was like, this is going to be something I need for my comeback for running. So I didn't really do anything in 2021, but then in 2022, I signed up for that Gold Coast Marathon again, and had a much a much better, more successful build. And I ran a 2:38, which was like, ninth place or something. I'm not winning the race, but it's pretty competitive. And at the time, I guess I was 42. And I was doing it really in my spare time. I like to say spare time because nobody has any spare time, but it wasn't taking up, the middle hours of my day when I was working or the times when I wanted to be with my kids. I love running because it's something that you can do around the edges in those pockets where, I could be resting, but, I'm running.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really great thing for me. And after that, one of my friends said, well, do you want to try to go for the Olympic trials? Because I was trying to break 2:40. I thought that would be amazing. And I did. And my friend said, oh, you should go for the Olympic trials qualification standard. And I was like, what is it? Because I am American. So it'd be the USA Olympic trials, but I live in Australia. And this was actually, do you know Sarah Pompiano? She's an ex-pro triathlete. She lives in Boulder.
Name sounds familiar. I don't know her personally, but yeah.
Yeah, she lives in Boulder. And she's like, I want to do it. We should try to do it at California International. And I said, okay, let's do it. So I trained for CIM in 2022, and I trained really well. Again, I had lingering hamstring issues all throughout the year. So this is also, we can get into it later about where my lever comes in to helping me and saving me along the way, which is great. But the hardest thing about trying to run seriously as you're getting older is keeping your body healthy and maintaining that. And I must run in a way that my hamstrings are just not happy. So if it's not one, it's the other. And I did have a small like tendonitis sort of thing 2 weeks before that CIM in 2022. But other than that, I had a great build and got to race day, felt amazing, had a wonderful first, 15, 16 miles of the race was on about 2:35 pace. Everything felt super easy, super controlled. I was talking to all the people around me. I went through the half in like 1:16 and was like, okay, that's a bit fast, but I feel like I'm not putting out any effort. Like I'm floating. This is great. And then at 15 to 16 miles, all of a sudden my left quad just felt like somebody had like punched it or shot it. It was very strange because it wasn't both my legs. It wasn't anything. It was just this one, all of a sudden completely dead leg that I then sort of like dragged to the finish, lost like 4 minutes in the end, and came over the line in 2:37:47. So I missed the standard by like 48 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I don't think I actually wanted to go to the Olympic trials because also I do live in Australia. It was in February. That's a huge long trip to Florida. I know that I'm not going to be winning the Olympic trials, but I thought it was a cool thing to achieve. And I didn't achieve it, but I knew that I had gotten my body as close to what I could do at that time. And actually getting under that time wasn't that important to me. I saw these girls around me that were crushed at the finish line that had just missed it. And I didn't feel that way. I was really proud of what I'd accomplished. But I kind of thought, yeah, that's where I'm at. I wasn't interested in trying to hit it again. So, I could have done it the next year. And I did do 2 more marathons, but neither of them were with the goal of making the Olympic trials qualifying time. I did one because I did the Tokyo Marathon for fun. I found out I got into it like 5 weeks before I lined up. So I ran a 2:40 something there. And then I did train seriously for the Sunshine Coast Marathon, which is in Australia in mid 2023. But that's like a really hot race. It's not a PR course at all.
Yeah.
It's not set up for PR. So I was like, I'd like to break the course record. And the course record was 2:41 for the women. It's not an elite national race or anything. So I did that. I did a 2:39. And I think on another course on another day, that was probably equivalent to a 2:36 somewhere, but it wasn't, it's not. But I achieved that goal. And then I was like, you know what? I've done what I want to do in the marathon. This is all my 43-year-old body is going to allow me to do. And I wanted to pick another goal. So I had watched the Tarawera Ultra Trail, Tarawera Ultra Trail Marathon, Ultra Marathon, which is in New Zealand, online the year before because my friend Anna McKenna, who's a great trail runner, she was doing it. And this race looked incredible. The trails looked so beautiful. People were running by geysers, up mountains, around these like Technicolor lakes. And I thought, I'd love to do that race. And so I signed up for the 100K this year, which was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, one more thing, just to stick in there. I did do 2 50Ks along the way as well. One like a local Noosa Ultra Trail 50, which was amazing, and one that was more of like a flatter 50K. So that was the Gold Coast 50. That was in 2021. And I ran really well there. I did a 3:18 for the 50K because it was like some of it was on the road and stuff. So that was something that showed me that like, yeah, I think I could go a bit longer. But
yeah,
the real mountain runs I'm still working on. I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, no, it's and that's a different beast in itself for sure. So jumping back just into marathon training, I think a little bit, I feel like a lot of triathletes have a tough time just focusing on running, and especially if they didn't kind of grow up running, you know, a lot of injuries, just because the marathon just requires so much from your body. And if you're just solely focused on running, like it's a lot of pounding that as a triathlete, you're not necessarily used to. Did you what was that transition for you from triathlon to running? I know you mentioned you did have a stress fracture leading into your first marathon, but it sounds like you were fairly healthy in the builds after that. What was like your mileage like? What did your training just overall look like? We don't have to obviously dive deep.
Yeah, no, I think my training overall was I still had that sort of triathlete mentality where I knew the importance of cross training and how that could benefit my fitness. So I was never really concerned about the mileage. When I was my fittest training for CIM, I was averaging maybe like 120K per week. So not super high. And that's like what, 75, 80 miles?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
I'm not sure anymore. It's amazing I'm American, but I'm totally converted. But I think it's like 75 to 80 miles a week. But I had at that whole year, I set a goal for myself to still ride 200K a week, which is about 130 miles a week, I think. 125 miles a week on my bike. So I would go out riding or on Zwift, most of it on Zwift. But that was all of my supplemental training. And then some of those Ks as well within my 120 to 130K, I would do like double runs on the lever just to have a little bit less of the pounding. Because I knew for me, it's not so much volume, but intensity really aggravates my old bones. So I need to be really careful with intensity. So having that when I wanted to dial up the running intensity was really, really helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's still a lot of volume, right? From a marathon perspective, 75, 80 miles a week, and then 200K on the bike. Definitely still putting the hours in.
Yeah.
From a training perspective. Did you continue that through like the ultra training? Was that similar to ultra training for you, or when you not converted to ultras, but when you started focusing on this 100K, did your volume change at all, or did you go with the same approach?
Yeah, well, when I signed up for Tarawera, I went and talked to, for a really, really long time, probably for longer than most people in the ultra running world have known them. I've known David and Megan Roche, and they're amazing people and coaches.
Local Boulder.
Local Boulder, yeah. And they coach like everybody in ultra running, which I didn't really know, but I had known, like I used to follow David's blog back in 2010. And I remember when they met each other running in the woods in North Carolina at their college. And, you know, I've just followed them for years and years and years before they were ever ultra runners or ultra runner coaches or anything. And we knew each other. And I said to them, I emailed them and I just said, look, I know like you coach all the best people and I don't have those types of goals anymore. I'm not trying to win anything. I'm not trying to, you know, do Western States, do something like this, but I still want to explore my personal edges. And I know that you're the best people. So do you have room for one more? And they were like, of course we do for you. So Megan's been coaching me for that. And She's been really great with me, just understanding how my body works. I think we would both like to do more intensity, and we did do some intensity last, like in September, October, but then my fault, definitely not hers. I went out on a run with two other people, with a professional triathlete and someone else. And I wanted to show them my local trails, and I wanted to do this tempo section at this pace. And I ended up messing up my hamstring. So I had to take a month off running through the end of November and December, and then just started running early December for Tarawera, which was in the middle of February. And we actually did 0 speed work, but I did get my volume up to about, I did do 100-mile week, and that was just because I was like really close. And so I just added a 5K run when I got to Tasmania one day. I know, but most weeks were probably around 80, 85 miles consistently for about 8 weeks. Lots of elevation, so I would have to drive in Noosa to go and find runs with elevation. So I think the hills really were, for me, hills are 95% of speed. If I can get up a hill well, I don't really need to be doing 1K reps at 330 per K. I can get what I need out of the hills. And I think Megan understood that as well. So we did 0. I know she would like me to be doing some strides and things like that, but only now that I've recovered well from that 100K do either of us feel like I'm ready for any of that. So I feel like we have a good jumping off point.
So second overall for women, which is extremely impressive in your first 100K. And there were other women that you were racing against that are very well known trail runners. Did you feel like when you stepped into to that starting line, did you feel like you had a second place in you that day?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I don't doubt myself anymore with the long stuff. I knew that I was going into probably around a 10-hour race. And you know what? I've done 20 of those before, but they've been Ironmans. I just had to reset what I was thinking about that. But I knew that I would be able to get through a 10-hour day. I was just praying for my legs to be okay and things like that. I was so happy that Ruth Croft, who won the race, was doing it. I just found out that she was a very late entry, but it was the best thing because I thought, okay, this is where she's the top of the sport, right? She won Western States in 2022. She won Tarawera outright one year over all the men. I knew, and my goal in my head was if I can be 15 to 20 minutes behind Ruth Croft, that's an amazing first 100K. And in the end, I think I was 24 minutes behind her. But I did go out with her in the beginning because it felt easy. And I knew once it started going up that I would just hold back and make sure to run my pace all day, which is what I did. But yeah, it was great. And it was fun to catch some of the men in the end because a lot of the men went out way too fast. And so slowly was going through the men. And by the end, I was like, I feel like I might have a good overall placing too. And ended up, I think, 7th overall, with the men. So it was really cool. It was a great experience. I learned so much about how just things I'd love to do next time, nutrition wise, pacing. I did take a lot of time in the aid stations because I wanted to set myself up for success. And it was actually a really hot day. So I knew that if I skipped on anything, it could come back to bite me in the end. So I just wanted to take my time. I never got myself into a place where I was why am I, questioning my meaning of life or anything. So I feel like I would like to explore that a little bit more on the next one.
Yeah. Question it a little bit the next time, just because, you you redlined it a little bit. And also you and Luke both have great videos from the aid station.
Chips. Yeah, I made a lot of nutritional mistakes. I forgot to pack I swapped out vests, but I forgot to put any nutrition into the second vest. So all it had was electrolyte, without, it had 20 calories in it, and then a water, and then I had one gel for 20 miles. And so that wasn't good. So if I got to any aid stations, I was like, chips, Coke. And I just had a lot of chips and Coke.
Yeah. So I do have to ask, so do you have the Ultra bug now? Are you excited for what's next in the Ultra world, or?
for 2 days, I honestly believed that I was one and done. I was like, I got everything out of it that I wanted to, everything. But then 2 days later, I started looking at races already and thought, oh, and I actually found this one race that you're doing, Brad, which I'm not going to end up doing, but the Desert Rats in April. That's in April, right?
Yeah, mid-April. Yep, out in Western Colorado.
Yeah, and we're going to be in Colorado in early April and then California. So I tried to explore just tacking on a week. But the plane tickets for the 4 of us with our kids were like $9,500 to change. So we're not going to be doing that. I am looking at doing the UTA, which is Ultra Trail Australia, 100K in the mid-May. So that's about 11 weeks from now. I'm not sure yet, but that would be something I'd like to do. And then the rest of the year, actually, we travel a lot for work, as you know. So we'll be going to all the Ironman World Championship events, and that, involves Europe and Hawaii and all these other terrible places to travel. But it's not a great time for me to focus on running. So I think if I can spend the first half of the year focusing on my fun goals like this, the second half of the year, focusing more on work will be better.
Yeah. So last training question. So were you happy enough with like the 100K training that you did this last block to kind of rinse and repeat that for this next block? Or like, are there any specific things that you did learn that you're going to implement for this new block?
Yeah, I think that the volume where we were at for me is a sweet spot as far as what my body can handle, but also what my schedule can handle. Like, I know I don't have the time to be running much more than a typical week of 80 to maybe 90 miles at the most. So I think that the volume's at a sweet spot, but the reason I'm so excited is because, and I said this to my coach, I was like, I feel like, we did that off of no speed work. Like, I didn't do it. Granted, for me, the hills, I was redlining a lot of hills that I ran in training. So that is, you're doing intervals. They're just not on a flat road. But I would like to incorporate, a bit more tempo into my training. Even just things like strides. I know my coach really loves for people, but I have not been able to do any since October. So I'd love to do strides. I'd love to do long tempos in my long runs. So adding in, 30, blocks of 30 minutes or an hour here and there in my long runs of tempo would be great. And even maybe some little intervals during the week, but that might be pushing it for these old bones. So we'll see.
One more question. I know I said one more question before.
No, I love it.
No, so it's just around so long runs for your 100K. What did you top out at?
So I did one that was marathon distance, so 42K. Okay. And then other than that, most of them were within between 30 and 35K. So between 18 and 23 miles. And that was pretty typical for me. I didn't do any double long run days, like 2 runs in one day, which I did used to do with Ironman. I'd do like a 2-hour run in the morning and a 40-minute run in the afternoon. She would just have me do a long run in the morning, but then back up with another long run the next day, just not quite as long. So the second day might be anywhere from 14 to 16 miles if the first day was 20 to 22. So just stacking some big weekends, we definitely did that. And then just going hunting for some hills, it is hard to do. That's the one thing. I wish we had some mountains here in Noosa that were just easy to get out the door and climb, because it's taking up more of my Saturdays than I would like, because I have to drive places and just really spend time scouting out routes to make sure I'm getting in that vert.
Yeah, absolutely. And you led to this before when we were talking about how we met at St. George Ironman Expo, and talking about lever, and I think, were you just coming off a stress fracture when we met?
Yes, I was literally just getting back to running, and I tried the lever, and I was like, I need to do this.
So when you used it initially, so was it to come back from the stress fracture and build back your volume?
Exactly. So at first I was using it like 2 or 3 times a week, incorporating even just walk, run, but I was taking a lot of body weight off. I was actually when I first got the lever, I was really surprised at how how much body weight you could take off if you wanted to. I know I have a picture where I was, what is 38 kilograms? That's what I was running at. And I'm like, that's not very much. So it's like 38 times 1. Sorry. I'm just doing the math here. 38 times 1.62. No, 61 pounds.
I think it's 2.2, right?
2.2. Yeah. Oh, sorry. That was kilometers. I wasn't a math major. No, okay. Yeah. So it's like 83 pounds. Yeah. So I was, I was taking off quite a bit. And, but then gradually adding that back in. And I loved how easy it was to add more weight back on, just to play around with it, and how easy it is just to set it up. Like you don't have to plan ahead to do a run on the lever. You can just decide right then if you're going to do it or not, which for me was the biggest thing, just having such a time crunch all the time.
And so for when you ran at 80 some pounds, was that more from a pain management standpoint? Like, were you a bit sore? First off, where was your stress fracture?
I had a femoral neck stress fracture. Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah. So not pain. Like I wasn't running through pain. It was more just making sure that, honestly, in the beginning, I was probably not taking off that much weight. I was running at that weight when I started building up speed. So if I wanted to do some first intervals, that's what I was doing, trying to do that, just take off some weight to get a little bit more speed, get the leg turnover before I had like all the weight on there, which is, yeah. But normally in my day-to-day, I just use it for double runs on days when I've done like a longer run in the morning, and like an easy double run just to, keep having that turnover, but not quite as much overall load on the day is a good one. My real wish, though, is that I had a lever coming back from pregnancy and during pregnancy. How many, you could just sell levers to pregnant women, because like the amount it could have helped me in those stages of life is ridiculous. Like while you're pregnant, taking off some of the weight, having that freedom to run, and then afterwards returning to running, but while you're still carrying some extra weight, it would have been so valuable.
Yeah, we do see that quite a bit. And I think that's one of the exciting things about just having the type of company that we do, is like just the ability to help people is like the name of the game for us, right? Like whether it's someone coming back from a stress fracture or wanting to get back from, fitness post-pregnancy, I think you even just mentioned it. Like my wife just gave birth to our third child a week ago. So, even using it for her just to kind of get back and get back to her, quote unquote fitness and doing what she loves to do again. And she loves the gym and to do gym workouts and things like that. But just to be able to move your body again post pregnancy is really important.
Yeah, the funny thing here is that because I'm in Australia, I actually don't really know about what is shipping like with the lever to Australia.
So shipping is included in our price to Australia.
Do they usually charge duties on import or no?
So lever takes care of all that. So
wow.
we take care of that whole process. Yeah, so we take care of
all your Australian listeners are now going to get a lever, because they should know that, because that's always the hardest thing, is getting things shipped here. And now that I have a lever, my friends, it's hard for me to keep it because my friends are constantly borrowing it when they're injured. So one of my best friends, Meredith Hill, who's a pro triathlete, she just came back from pregnancy almost 2 years ago now, but she borrowed it first then and loved it, and then has since gotten like a plantar fasciitis and now is using it for her return to run. But then last week when I got back from Tarawera, I said, hey, can I borrow it back just for a couple of weeks, and then you can have it for a bit. So I think once people try it, they realize all the different ways that they can use it, which is great.
Yeah, a lot of different use cases. And, I think one of the most exciting things for me as obviously a co-founder of this company is it's not just used for like injury recovery, like we initially thought it was going to be when we started the company. Just the performance aspects to reducing body weight and be able to do some overspeed work, like you mentioned, like being able to log your doubles on it, right?
Yeah.
And just really steady turnover on your double runs, where like going out, you can still get a 40-minute run outside on your double, but it's a little slower, and you don't get to feel as fresh as you do when you get the turnover on with the lever.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm excited in this next, now that I have my lever back, thanks Meredith, in this next build, because I do feel like I'm ready to incorporate some speed work, but I can't do too much of it. I think that it's going to be great for me for that on the speed work days as well, especially in the beginning, just seeing what speeds I can handle without stressing my hamstrings.
Yes. And yeah, don't have to dive into all of it right now, but the long, steady stuff where you can run really quick paces, taking 10, 15% of your body weight off, but running long and quick paces just, adapts you that much more for especially the ultra space.
Yeah. Question, since I have you here and you're an ultra runner, do you have any people who've used it yet? And I haven't, but I'm curious, like doing uphill running on a treadmill?
Yes. So we see everything. We definitely see everything. So uphill running for sure, like hill repeats. We definitely see that, especially just I think I saw you do a 30-minute incline run the other day, right? On Strava at 12% grade.
Yeah. I actually do those twice a week. Yeah.
They're quite impressive. They're super impressive.
Really. Well, it's mentally very, very impressive to me that I can even withstand that. And I always tell my coach, I said, I told you, I told myself and you that I didn't want to be doing those things that, I did as a pro triathlete because you had to do them, but like were just horrible workouts. But I've actually come to a place where I can do that workout without, it's very interesting to see how that workout has progressed for me over time. So each week I don't know if this is like a trade secret of hers, but she has me do 30 minutes at 10% one day. And then the next day, 30 minutes at 15%. But then this training block, she's just moved it to 12 and 15. So I'm going to have to ask her about that. But yeah, it's just something we do. It's very slow. It doesn't add a lot of mileage to my overall Strava totals, which really annoys me. But
yeah, right. But you don't have to jump in the car and drive to the closest hill.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have it at your house.
Well, yeah. And I do it usually when my kids are doing their homework or just got home from school and they're decompressing. So it doesn't take up any extra time of the day, which is awesome.
That's perfect.
But yeah, I'm wondering, I don't know if she'd let me use the lever for those. I'll have to ask.
It would be an interesting test for you to do it with at least one of them, whether the first one or the second one of the week. If they're back-to-back days, just to compare versus a previous week.
Yeah, I'd never want to go back though. So.
Well, this has been great. I'm really excited to follow you as you prepare for your next 100K in a couple months here.
I think I'm more excited to follow you, Brad, in your build to Leadville 100. That's exciting.
Oh man, we'll see. It's going to be a tough one. I know I'm already seeing very many sleepless nights in my future. So yeah. So it'll be
good training for a 100-miler, then, isn't it?
What was that?
That's good training for a 100-miler, the sleep deprivation.
That's true. Well, they do start the Leadville 100 at 4 a.m. and I would love to finish around the sunset. So
okay.
Hopefully
fine.
I won't have to do the overnight bit, but
I love that.
You are right that is good training for that piece of it. So but yeah, so what's the best way to follow WYN, to follow Beth? How can you keep up with what you've got going on?
So I pretty much am only active on Instagram, but very active there. So at Beth G McKenzie, and I share lots of my training, lots of daily life stuff, occasional WYN Republic stuff, things with the family, but mostly running on there. And for WYN Republic, it's spelled WYN Republic with a Y, so WYNREPUBLIC.com, and at WYN Republic on Instagram. So yeah.
That's great. And, I was thinking, I think Noosa needs to hire you just for their tourism department because you make Noosa look so good. So
you should see this video I got this morning of the sunrise as I was coming over. It's the same one every day, but it never gets old. I'm like, this is the best view in the world.
So good. Living in paradise.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes, so good. Well, thanks for being on, Beth. We really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, Brad. It's good to see you. I'll see you at the next event.
3, 2, 1.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about incorporating a lever system into your training, follow us on Instagram @Lever Movement, or even follow me on Strava to learn how I incorporate lever into my training for ultras. Until next time, keep running.